And there's a reason why Andy called his workspace or his studio the factory.
Yeah.
Because when you have a group of people together, there's interaction, there's discussion, there is multiple ideas, whether it's ideas in the film world, in the world of painting, in the music world, even in the fashion world, when he was exchanging ideas with Halston and Victor Hugo.
Yes.
We talked about the collaboration in the 70s and 80s, how different mediums worked with each other. And one that was really unique, and it sort of started out in the music world and the fashion world, but especially in the fashion world, was Halston, which no other artist had ever really thought of the idea of collaborating, whether it's music, fashion, or anything.
Yep.
And Andy and Halston collaborated together. He did a Halston bottle, I think, didn't he?
Yes, and he did ads for Halston, but he also designed fabrics for him, the quote, space fruit fabrics.
I didn't know that. I didn't know
Yes, and one of the things Halston was known for was collaborating with Martha Graham and Isamu Noguchi for the sets and the design.
Right.
So Halston had been a collaborative guy for a while. And when he and Andy got together, Andy was doing fabrics, he was doing ads, he was doing drawings of Halston. So there was this very fertile kindling of ideas and shared ideas. And with the your altered image shoot, Halston offered Andy, I'll give you some Halston dresses. And Andy said, no, I'm
No, that was both of us. We didn't want to play into the drag thing.
Right.
Because Andy did have drag kids around, Candy Darling, Holly Woodlawn. So we didn't want to play into that.
Right.
And that's why these are called altered image, AI, which is so interesting because AI is artificial intelligence,
right.
which is so prevalent now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I just realized that now that my stuff is AI. Our collaboration is AI.
Absolutely.
Because he became this other creature in all of these pictures. But that was a really fertile collaboration. But he collaborated with big companies. Like I remember he designed the Perrier Jouet bottle.
Yep.
And I think he worked with Chanel. He did the Chanel bottle.
One of the things I wanted us to talk about was your collaboration in the Altered Image series. I think that's one of the masterpieces of two artists who get together, and in some ways very much like Marcel Duchamp and Man Ray back in the 20s when they did the Rose C'est la Vie portraits. I think in one of your write-ups you mentioned being inspired by that. But I would love for you to talk about both from a personal experience in making that, and then your sort of interaction and observation of Andy. Like, what was that like to be in that process?
That process was so interesting because it took place over a 2-day period, and we used 2 different makeup artists. One makeup artist did kind of a fashion version of it. And if you look at the work carefully, you can see the difference between the 2 different shoots. When I mean fashion makeup, they just sort of glamorized his face. And then on the second shoot, we had a theater person do the makeup. Well, a theater person is very different than a fashion person. Yeah. The theater person just took Andy's face down to white. They put spirit gum on his eyebrows and flattened it out and created a canvas.
Wow.
And then they painted his eyebrows. They painted his face in a different way. So it's actually 2 different things. And it's so interesting because it's that period that I often talk about when fashion met art. Well, this was a good example.
This is it.
And for the longest time, people would ask me, do you do fashion photos? And I say, not really, but my photos become fashionable. Yes. And to that point, I worked on a collaborative exhibition with the Ferragamo family in Florence. And you can't get much more fashion than the Ferragamo family. And so the work that Andy and I did together, like on the days of the shoot and stuff, I mean, I have to say, let's go back to picking out the wigs. we went in a taxi up to 57th Street, and it was like, Monsieur Louis or something, and it was like, at that time, if you wanted to just do drag stuff, I guess you went to some place in the East Village or you know what I mean, to buy some wigs. This was about that. This was high-end, 57th Street. And he took Andy into his private room so that no one could see anything because it's so, I guess, forbidden. And we came about with the wigs that are in the series, which I think a few of the pictures are in the book. But it was that idea that in that time frame, nobody would even think of that. And even at the time, I remember Bob Colacello was appalled by the whole thing because Bob often was the person that was getting portraits by wealthy ladies, and he thought that was going to scare those women away, like Andy's in drag. Like, why should I have this drag queen do my portrait? And of course, Fred Hughes, which was so different about it, he thought it was brilliant. He loved the idea. It was just like in life, there's always seems to be two takes on everything.
Yes.
My take and your take. I guess history and time has proved us correct that these pictures have withstood the test of time, and they're still curious, and people still wonder, what does it mean? You know what I mean? Like, I still to this day will have people say, did Andy want to be a woman? And it's like, I remember, absolutely not. Absolutely not. As somebody else pointed out, Andy just wanted to be pretty. Yeah. Just like everybody else.
Yes.
We want to be handsome or pretty, because he never got to be pretty.
No.
He never was. And so it was, I think, ultimately, Andy really enjoyed these photo shoots. And at the moment.
Yes.
He loved the moments. And people often think like, oh, those drag photos. Well, they're not drag photos because, he's wearing a tie and a shirt. It was the idea of that series was called Altered Image, the idea of altering your image in the way that a policeman wears a policeman's outfit during the day, airline stewardess wears a stewardess outfit during the day. We all have our drag.
What strikes me about that, and you really underline it, in terms of Andy's identity as himself. And he was mysterious, let's say that. He loved playing, to the audience, let them figure out what and who I am. But in his little book, A to B and Back Again, there is probably the most, what I call pop zen statements that he makes that is the most profound thing about art. And it's a little, conversation, and it goes something like, well, what about this, Andy? Well, that's nothing. Well, what about that, Andy? Well, that's nothing. Well, if everything is nothing, why do you make art? And he said, you can't treat nothing as nothing. You have to treat the nothing as if it's something. Then make something out of nothing. And that totally, froze my mind and said, oh my God, that's the wisest thing. And that gets to the essence of creativity. This is where the brain's imagination comes up with new things that don't exist in the form the artist makes them. They may exist in some form out in the world. Leonardo's looking at birds, invents a flying machine. Right. So the artist's creative mind is absorbing, transforming, and then creating something new. And I think Andy just did that all the time. And I think that was one of his great gifts. Once you've seen pop, sort of look through the pop window, you'll never see things the same way again.